Okay, let's look at an example here of finding the mean and the median for a data set. I have this set of what I'm calling exam scores. These are just some made-up scores that I made, but would look typical possibly to a class where you have the two-digit numbers here, somewhere in the range of 0 to 100. And we want to find the mean and the median of this set. I'm going to show you how to do it by hand if you didn't have the Texas Instruments calculator to run the one variable stats, plus I'll show you how to do that, how to use a TI-84 or TI-83 to run the one variable stats command. So first of all, if you wanted to find the mean, you would add all of these numbers up. Okay, there's 17 of them, and if you add them all up, I got 1,176. And so for the mean, you add them all up, there were 17 of them, divide by 17, and we get that x bar is approximately 69.2. Okay? Let's look at the median. If you want to find the median, you need to put the numbers in order and find the middle number. There's 17 of them, which is an odd number, so we're going to have a value in the middle, which turns out to be 74. Okay? So if I put my 17 numbers in order, I have the 8 of them in red, and then in black we have the median, and then in blue I have another 8 numbers. So we have exactly 8 numbers below and 8 numbers above. That's 16. The 17th number there in the middle is 74. Okay? So if it's odd, you have to find the number in the middle. Suppose we didn't have the 74 and we had the 16 numbers, you would average 68 and 74 to find the median. If you have an even number, there is no middle number and you average the two middle numbers. But if it's odd, put them in numerical order and find the middle number. So for 17, the middle number is the 9th number. Okay. While I'm thinking about that, I think I said this in another video, but let me say it again. In the homework, sometimes it talks about the location of the median. In this set of numbers, the median is in the 9th location, the 9th data point. Suppose we didn't have one of these 74s and we had 16 numbers, then the median would be halfway between the 8th and the 9th, and we would say it's in the 8.5 position. It's kind of weird, but that's the way we talk about averaging the two numbers. They'd say it was in the 8.5 position. Okay? So that's how you do the mean and the median by hand. If you have a Texas Instruments calculator, you can get all the one variable stats in the same way here. We're going to talk about measuring the spread with the 5-number summary and standard deviation coming up. Those are actually going to come out of the same command here, so you'll know how to do all that after I show you this. So the first thing we have to do is enter the data. So we turn our calculator on and hit the stat button here by the arrows. You have the one that says stat, and I'm going to hit number 1 there, hit enter to go in and edit. Okay. I have some stuff I've been doing previously here, so I'm going to go over and highlight L1, use the arrows to go up to the name L1 and hit clear and enter, and that's the way to clear a list. Probably do this in more than one video, but I'll show you if you accidentally delete one, which is pretty common, or if you run some program that messes up your lists. You really want to have L1 through L6 showing to be able to do these things in the simplest way. Just hit stat and run number 5 there. If you hit stat, if one of your lists is missing, if you don't see L1 and L2 or you see different names or something, hit stat and number 5 and then just hit enter and it'll say done. That sets up the editor, restores everything to default. So stat, edit. But you want to have a clear L1 here, and then you type the numbers in. Okay, so we got 36, enter, 45, enter. And I don't want you to have to watch me type all 17, so I will pause the video and then resume after I get them typed in. Okay, so while the video was paused, I typed in my 17 numbers. Okay, and remind you, you always want to double check those numbers. Make sure you haven't typed any in wrong. If you mess up and enter in a wrong number or skip a number or something, you're going to get wrong answers to this. Okay, the calculator is going to do the computation, so it's really important that we give it the right values. Okay, so if you have what we call one variable statistics here, a single variable, and we want to analyze it and find the numerical values here, I enter it into L1. You can put it in any list. I'll show you here in a minute. You could change the name of the list, but it's easier just to use L1 by default. Okay. So we put it in L1. Then you hit the stat button again, and instead of editing, use the arrow button to go over to the calculation menu. It says calc at the top to do different calculations. And we'll talk about some of the different things in here over the course of the semester, but right now we're going to use number 1, one variable stats. Okay. So I hit enter. And depending on my calculator, I either see this menu or it just pops back on your home screen and says one variable stats. Okay? If it does pop on your home screen and say one variable stats, if you just hit enter, it'll automatically use L1 and do the one variable stats. Okay? If you wanted to do a different list, you would have to tell it before you hit enter. You could do like second and 2 and tell it L2 and do the one variable stats on L2. Newer calculators, somewhere along the way, Texas Instruments decided to add menus here for some of those optional arguments. So I get this menu and I can add where the list is. It's in L1, so that's what I want to do, so I could leave that alone. I'm going to clear it just to show you if it wasn't L1, you can do second and 1. Above 1 through 6, you have the list names. So second and 1 to do L1. If you had a big list of data and you had numbers showing up a lot of times, like let's say we had a list and there were like 35 50s in the list, and you didn't want to type them every time, you can use what are called frequencies. You'd have another list with the number of times the numbers show up. We don't do that in this class. We're not going to handle huge data sets on our own here in this class. So we're always going to use the raw data and list the numbers. Like 60 shows up twice. I have the 60 listed twice in my data. So leave the frequency list blank. And then just go down to calculate, and it quickly pops on my home screen and then runs it. Okay. So again, if you didn't get the menu, if you just hit enter on the home screen when it says one variable stats, you should get to this same point. Okay. And you'll see a lot of things here. You've got the mean. We found that I had 69.2 because I rounded it, but there's X bar to several decimal places. To find that, I did 1176 divided by 17. It's showing me both of those numbers. The sum of X is 1176. It also sums the X squareds, which are used in other computations. The next two things have to do with standard deviation. We'll talk about that in an upcoming section. The S sub X is your your sample standard deviation, and the sigma sub X is a population standard deviation. And then you have N equals 17. Then you have what we call the 5-number summary that breaks the data into quartiles, where a fourth of the data falls in each of these. You have your minimum X and your maximum X. You have Q1 and Q3. Those are the quartiles. 25% of the data lies between the minimum and Q1. 75% of the data is between the minimum and Q3, 25% above Q3. And then you have the median right in the middle, 50% below, 50% above. And the median 74. Okay? So that's all you got to do. Enter your data, do stat, edit, enter your data, preferably into L1. And then you can do stat, calc, and just run number 1. Okay? If you put it in L1, you can just hit enter if it popped onto the home screen like that, or you hit enter a couple of times here, calculate, and there you go. All the one variable stats. You get the mean, the median, the full 5-number summary. You've also got the standard deviations there when we talk about those.